Welcome to another edition of Beneath the Surface. Paul Morano with my guest tonight, Mr. John Tudoris, and we are going to be discussing collectivism versus individualism. And this comes on the heels of a few weeks back, if you all remember, the new socialist Mayor Mamdani of New York made this statement.
We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism.
Now let's get right into this, John. There was a lot of controversy for at least a week, throughout the internet and so forth about the statement, because a lot of conservatives, of course, pushed back big time, saying that this country was built on rugged individualism, and collectivism is, of course, another euphemism for socialism and communism, which, of course, has failed throughout history, and all of the body bags in each country that it was tried is a testament to that. What I want to focus on with you is not just those regular talking points, but this notion of rugged individualism, because the way I see the past 50 years or so, this country has actually gone from rugged individualism to, in a sense, radical individualism or a feminist individualism. A kind of individualism that doesn't say pull yourself up in your bootstraps necessarily, but what it does say is I am an autonomous being, and I don't need other people. I don't even need to get married and have a family. And we see this, in a sense, this spiritual cancer spread like wildfire in the past decade or so. This radical individualism began with radical feminism. And of course, we needed a balance to that. So men became, in a sense, just a bird's eye view, started to become more feminist. We live in an age of confusion and insanity now, all due, and this, of course, is going to be, this from a couple of the books that I've written. I trace it back to the material cause of this madness, which is contraception. And I'll just leave it there and get your comments on this.
There's a lot in that. I'll start
Okay.
off first just by stating regarding Mamdani's comment.
Yeah.
Two words when I first read it initially came to mind. One was straw man. The other was hyperbole. And of course, in the straw man argument is when you make a sort of a paper mache caricature of what something is in order to prove your point.
So
Because
what
it's
do you mean by
easier to
that?
knock down.
What point was he trying to prove?
This whole rugged individualism is evil, and of course, the real key is that it's not evil per se to operate as an individual, but it's everything should be in context with our nature, which is we're communal beings. We actually have a species. We're not like the angels, to borrow from Thomas Aquinas. We're a species unto ourselves. We're actually part of the human race. And so it's not an either or, it's actually a both and.
Yeah.
And of course the hyperbole, on the other end, the warmth of collectivism. I'm like, what kind of warm and fuzzies are you talking about? I'm like, I've never once heard collectivism as seen as warm.
Well, when you're being
know?
taken care of, though, when you're being taken care of, like the nanny state.
Yeah, that's such a lie. Such a
Yeah.
lie.
So it's a lie, but that's the when he wants to conjure up in your head that all of
Yeah.
you, particularly single women, let's face it, all the statistics say it, that single women are the ones that are duped most with regard to this, probably because of their sensitivity
Yeah.
to being taken care of. That's part of their nature. They want a man, and since the breakdown of marriage and the family, they more and more depend on the government, and that's what the government wants them to do, particularly socialist or collectivist governments.
Yeah. Yeah. What was that somewhat famous saying from Margaret Thatcher? Socialism works until you run out of other people's money.
Yes.
So, good luck trying to pull money out of the till that doesn't even actually have any money.
Yeah.
That's a conversation for another day. But in generally speaking, we have a fiat currency, and with a massive debt, and the only reason why we're able to float it is because of our position within the world economically and politically. If we were a much smaller country like Venezuela, we would have imploded long ago. But at some point, even a massive
Hmm.
political superpower like us, at some point, it can't go on indefinitely. I mean, I have
Right.
no magic crystal ball, but anyone who takes a real objective look at it has to say the structure at some point collapses. We just don't know how.
Right. Well, before that happens, basically,
Yes.
I think you hit on something really important that I'd like to spend the rest of the show on, and that is collectivism and individualism. These are words that symbolize that we are part of a community and a family, which is the smallest unit of community that we have. And on the other side, we are individual persons. We're not just like a ream of paper or a
Yep.
dozen eggs. We are actually individual persons with intellect and free will who can carve out a life for ourselves and determine our destiny. So, in that respect, the individualism is important. Yet we're not simply individuals. We share a common human nature with people, and the family, as God has created it, is that unit, not the individual, but the unit of individuals that is meant to be the buffer between the state and the individual itself. Break that down, and of course, the state has more free reign against individuals.
No, you bring up something super, super important.
All right.
Um, uh, Anyone who's watched us long enough over the years has probably either heard myself, you, or one of your other interlocutors, Bob LeBlanc, say that just about all philosophical ideas can be traced back to either Aristotle or Plato. And the idea of the individual building block of society being the family was in
Yeah.
the Aristotle camp, and the individual, which we can see plainly in Plato's Republic, is on Plato when he built that mock society with
Yeah.
individuals doing tasks like the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, and we can actually see in Plato's Republic that that actually fails, because after he's built the society, which was looking pretty good from the beginning,
Yeah.
until you get to like, well, what happens? And they're talking about the guardian class, the raising and begetting of children, and he's like, boy, I think I got it wrong. No, I really think I got it wrong. I really shouldn't say anything. I really shouldn't say anything. And finally, he relents, and through the character of Socrates, Plato says, well, they pretty much have this hippie commune, and no one knows who their parents are, and they're always sleeping around. I'm like, well, this is just a really bad paint yourself in the corner. But that's kind of what's happening now to some degree or another, as we devolve from a post-Christian society. Which is one of the best promoters of that family unit and the virtue that can be fostered within it, because that in itself informs society at large.
And that
But
I
when you
think is
have that
because,
massive breakdown,
yeah, I think that's because you said that Christianity is the harbinger of in the strength with regard to family life. I think that's for two
yeah,
reasons. Just really quick, we can do two shows on this. Um, it's supposed to reflect the marriage between Christ and his church. And I think it also reflects the inner life of the Trinity himself, whereas the love between the Father and the Son is the Holy Spirit, similar to or akin to the love between the husband and wife is the child. Um, and so I think the funny thing about Christianity, what it brought to the world, is not only strength of family life, but it also brought to the world the dignity of the individual. And
yes,
this is what both secular collectivism and secular individualism are missing. We are the one, Christians, Christianity is what brought the dignity of the human person as made in God's image and likeness to the world. And hence, everyone is equal under the law. and has equal dignity by virtue of being human. Both of those things, the goodness of community, or what they call collectivism, the goodness of community and the goodness of the individual, need to be blended perfectly to create a good society.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And from the way Christianity, you're right, they could do easily a show or two on this. The way in which, but boiling it down, the way in which it affects it. One is the image that you mentioned there. You know
Mm,
how there's this Trinity, and then and how we're made in the image and likeness of God, and how once once we enter into that, that that causes us our nature
yeah.
to become more perfected. The second is, and this is the sort of the invisible part to our senses, but is absolutely real, is that God gives us grace, gratis, this free gift of Himself to help us enter into it. So we can go back to, for example, Aristotle's ethics, his Nicomachean Ethics, and see lots of wonderful commentary on how a human soul ought to operate in order to pursue happiness. But he, even then, he admitted he didn't. It was possible to pursue this happiness, you know, by living a moral and virtuous life, but we can't actually arrive there in this life. He just didn't have enough data. And with
Mhm.
Christianity, we get this additional data that says, well, yes, the reason why that is ultimate happiness isn't here. It's actually in union with God in the next. And so this grace, this free gift from God enables us to actually go on that journey. And the reason why God gives it to us is because all from all eternity, that's how He designed us ultimately, that we are meant to actually be filled by Him in order to enter into union with Him.
So take away God and His grace, and you're left with the radical collectivism of communism, which was atheistic in its essence, and the
Yeah,
radical individualism of post-Christian the post-Christian world that Western countries have devolved into, and that of course also is detrimental because it basically creates a culture of death and an age of insanity, which we have entered both now. So here's my thesis,
yeah.
basically in a nutshell, that take away God from society and His grace, which is the glue. What happens, those two things, a society is going to go one way or the other. The state is going to become God, or the individual is going to become God. And with Western countries, of course, the individual has become God. And with this inevitably turns into, give it enough time, is the other way, is socialism. Because this kind of radical individualism, where everyone's his own God, creating his own reality, his own morality, eventually that's not going to hold up, obviously. And the state, with the breakdown of the family, the state is going to slowly come in, and this is what's been happening with the socialist movement, I think. Bernie Sanders, AOC, Mandami, and the like, slowly creeping in so that they can take over, and that is going to be probably the fate of the United States if we don't watch out in the next 10, 20 years. That the radical individualism that began with feminism, that began with the pill, and inevitably turns into a radical collectivism. And that's where we're headed to. And that's my thought. Your final thoughts.
Um, yeah, we'll replace the term radical with secular individualism. I mean, if you have an individual who's looking to operate justly, you know, according to his nature, he's not gonna do so in a selfish way. He's gonna do so in relation as an individual with, you know, in relation to his family, his community, and state, and so on. Um, but without that grace, without that gift from God, without the desire to live a virtuous life, it becomes selfish. And that selfishness, just as you mentioned, that radical um, individualism ultimately will turn towards a totalitarian movement. And
Correct.
and and again, if we dip back to Plato and his Republic, he actually um, provides these models of different city states and how the one devolves into the next. And when you
Right.
have, and the second worst was a straight democracy, and ultimately there's the moves in that turn towards a totalitarian state, which is the worst of the worst. When you have a totalitarian ruler, meaning on the inside, it's topsy-turvy. He's ruled by his passions and his appetites, not by wisdom, not by his intellect or will towards choosing the proper good. And the whole state follows in suit with that. And
Yeah.
that's the worst. And history has shown those, when we look at, for example, the last century, any of the totalitarian regimes, just millions upon millions of people die. Why? Because people, oddly enough, in these totalitarian collectivist regimes are
Yeah.
ruled by extraordinarily selfish people who steal other people's goods for their own individual pleasure. Isn't
Yeah.
that interesting?
Yeah. And it's if you read the tea leaves, it does seem like the tyranny of radical individualism devolves or evolves into this kind of radical totalitarianism that, again, if we don't watch out, it's right around the corner here at the United States. Final thought, John?
Yeah. Be good. If you
Yeah.
don't be a Debbie Downer. If you see enough of the tea leaves to know where things are going, there's no way you as an individual can do everything. So be better yourself. And what ends up happening is when you're better, other people around you tend to be better, and you create these little pockets as well springs of very good community, authentic community, not this kind of
Mhm.
collectivist, where the state is your daddy, but actually according to our nature, families,
Yeah.
authentic friendship. And that is where you will find true peace and true joy.
So be an example. And if you're married, allow your sacrament of marriage to be a sacrament to the world. Let God's grace flow through
Amen.
you to others. Mr. John Tudorus, thank you so much for your insights, and always fun to do a show with you.